The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into my wrists as Detective Morrison led me through my own office. My employees watched in stunned silence, their expressions ranging from disbelief to pity. The weight of their gazes pressed against my back, but I kept my head high. Near the reception desk, my sister, Victoria, stood with a smirk of satisfaction. "I warned you, Diana," she called, her voice dripping with triumph. "You should have stayed in your lane instead of trying to compete with me." A familiar anger burned in my chest, but I schooled my expression into indifference. After 15 years of living in Victoria's shadow, I had finally built something of my own. Now, she was trying to destroy it with lies and fabricated evidence. My name is Diana Chen, and at 35, I had spent the last 3 years building Chen Digital Solutions from the ground up. Meanwhile, Victoria had inherited our father's company, Chen Innovations, not because she was qualified, but because she was his favorite. She had never understood the business, only how to wield power. "Miss Chen," Morrison said as we reached his car, "you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." I nodded and slid into the back seat. Through the window, I watched Victoria animatedly spinning her tale to the officers, feeding them her carefully constructed narrative of corporate theft and betrayal. She had no idea what was really in that office safe. The ride to the police station was silent, giving me time to reflect on how we had arrived at this moment. Growing up, Victoria had always been the golden child, charismatic, charming, and effortlessly commanding attention. I had been the quiet one, more interested in coding and algorithms than social games. Our father, James Chen, had built Chen Innovations from nothing, turning it into one of Seattle's most successful tech firms. Victoria had always assumed she would inherit everything simply because she was the eldest. She never bothered to understand the industry, content to let others do the work while she played CEO. But in his final months, our father had started to see through her. He knew the company needed more than a figurehead. He had made plans accordingly, plans Victoria never knew about. At the station, Detective Morrison led me into a sterile interrogation room. He set up a recording device, his expression unreadable. "Miss Chen, your sister has provided evidence that you stole proprietary data from Chen Innovations to start your company," he said. "She claims you accessed their servers after hours and downloaded confidential project specs." I tilted my head. "Has she shown you proof of these so-called server logs?" Morrison shuffled through his notes. "She provided documentation showing unauthorized access from an IP address traced to your home." I raised an eyebrow. "And has anyone verified the authenticity of those logs?" His frown deepened. "Our tech team is analyzing them now." "Good. While they're at it, they might want to check the timestamps. They'll see the alleged breach occurred when I was still a legal employee of Chen Innovations, with full system access rights." His pen hesitated on the paper. "Victoria also claims you stole their client list to poach customers." "Detective," I said evenly, leaning forward, "have you checked when those clients signed with my company? Every single one came to us of their own accord, after experiencing service failures under Victoria's leadership." He studied me, his skepticism wavering. "You seem awfully calm for someone facing serious charges." "That's because I have nothing to hide," I said. "But if you really want the truth, check my office safe." His brow lifted. "Your safe?" "Combination 47-22-391. Inside, you'll find documents that will change this entire conversation." Morrison exchanged a glance with another officer. "Johnson, send a team to search Miss Chen's office." I leaned back in my chair, waiting. Victoria thought she had one, that she had finally crushed me under her heel. She had no idea what was coming. Hours passed. I answered questions, provided alibis, and waited. Finally, Morrison returned, holding a thick manila envelope. "Miss Chen," he said, his tone markedly different. "Care to explain what we just found?" I gave a slow smile. "Those, detective, are the real reason Victoria is so desperate to get rid of me." He opened the envelope, flipping through the pages. "The first set proves that every major client who left Chen Innovations did so due to documented service failures under Victoria's management," I explained. Morrison's frown deepened as he read. "The second set contains internal memos from our father, questioning Victoria's ability to lead." Then, he pulled out a sealed envelope, my father's handwriting scrawled across the front. "And that," I said softly, is a letter my father wrote 3 days before he died. He knew Victoria wasn't fit to run the company. He also knew she would never accept that truth. Morrison carefully opened the envelope, scanning the contents. His eyebrows rose higher with every line. This letter states that he left controlling interest in Chen Innovations to you, not Victoria. I nodded. She forged documents after his death to make it look like she inherited everything. The original will is in there too, along with proof of the forgery. Morrison exhaled sharply and sat back. Why didn't you come forward with this earlier? Because I wanted to build something of my own first. I said simply. I knew that if I challenged Victoria immediately, she'd paint me as the jealous little sister. So I waited. I built Chen Digital Solutions to prove I didn't need our father's company to succeed. The truth about the inheritance, that was my insurance policy. But now, Victoria had forced my hand. She thought she could destroy me by getting me arrested, but in reality, she just handed me the perfect opening to expose everything. Morrison gathered the documents carefully. We'll need to investigate these claims thoroughly. In the meantime, you're free to go. We'll be in touch. As I left the police station, my phone buzzed with a flood of messages from employees, clients, and lawyers. But the one that caught my eye was from my old assistant at Chen Innovations. Victoria's having a meltdown. Someone told her about the safe. I couldn't help but smile as I climbed into a taxi. The game wasn't over, but for the first time since our father's death, I held all the cards. Victoria had always underestimated me, dismissed me as the quiet, boring sister who never deserved attention. She was about to learn just how wrong she'd been. The next morning, as I walked into Chen Digital Solutions, I was greeted by the sound of applause. My employees, standing proudly in the lobby, were celebrating my return. Their loyalty meant everything. They had stood by me when Victoria tried to destroy me. Back to work, everyone, I said, grinning. We've got clients counting on us. My office was just as I'd left it, except for one thing, the safe was open, its contents now in the hands of the police. Alex, my assistant, appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. The press is calling non-stop, he said, and Victoria's lawyer tried to serve us with a cease and desist order. I sat down at my desk, powering up my computer. On what grounds? They're still claiming intellectual property theft. But there's something else. Chen Innovations stock dropped 15% this morning. Rumors about the inheritance dispute are spreading. Perfect. Victoria's attempt to ruin me was backfiring spectacularly. And I was just getting started. My phone buzzed again. Detective Morrison. Miss Chen, we verified the documents from your safe. The will forgery is undeniable. And we have enough evidence to pursue criminal charges against your sister. Thanks, Detective, I replied calmly, but let's hold off on that for now. I've got a different approach in mind. I hung up and turned my attention to my email. There was a message from the Chen Innovations Board of Directors, requesting an urgent meeting, another from their largest client, voicing concerns about the company's stability, and the final one, Victoria herself. Whatever you think you're doing, stop it now. You have no idea what you're messing with. I was composing my reply when the door burst open. Victoria stormed in, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, face flushed with fury. You vindictive little snake, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? I leaned back in my chair, studying her. The perfect image of control was cracking. Her hands trembled slightly, and her blazer was misbuttoned. I could ask you the same thing, I said coolly. Having me arrested? Really, Victoria? You stole from me, she screamed. Everything Dad built was supposed to be mine. Was it? I replied, standing and meeting her gaze. Or did you just convince yourself it was? Dad left you the company because you manipulated the will, not because you deserved it. She let out a bitter laugh. Deserved it? I was his firstborn, his heir. You were just the weird little tech geek he pitted. Is that what you think? I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a USB drive. Want to know what Dad really thought? Victoria's eyes locked on the drive. What is that? Security footage. From Dad's office. The day before he died. When he threatened to expose your affair with his secretary unless you coerced him into changing the will in your favor. The color drained from her face. You're lying. Am I? I raised an eyebrow. Shall we watch it together? See how you threatened him. Told him you'd ruin his reputation unless he signed everything over to you? She stepped back, confidence shattering. How did you? I was there, I said quietly, my voice low, in the server room next door, doing maintenance. I heard everything, and I made sure to save the footage. Victoria sank into a chair, her legs trembling. She looked smaller now, defeated. What do you want? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Initially, nothing. I was happy building my own company, letting you play CEO until you inevitably destroyed everything, but then you tried to have me arrested. I had to, she burst out, her voice cracking. You were becoming too successful. Clients were leaving us for you. The board was starting to ask questions about my leadership. I walked around the desk, perching on the edge with a calm smile. And now, I said, they'll be asking even more questions. About the will. About your qualifications. About everything. You'll destroy the company, she murmured. No, Victoria. You've been destroying it for years. I'm going to save it. Just then, Alex reappeared in the doorway. Miss Chen, the board of directors is here. Victoria shot up from her chair, eyes wide with panic. What? They're not supposed to be here until tomorrow. They're not here for you, I said, standing. They're here for me. The next hour was exactly what our father would have called a corporate bloodbath. I laid out the evidence as Victoria's forgery, her mismanagement, and the trail of failed clients under her watch. When I played the security footage, Victoria slumped in her chair, visibly defeated. Miss Chen, the board chairman said, addressing me, not her. Given these revelations and the original terms of your father's will, we believe immediate leadership changes are necessary. Victoria shot to her feet. You can't do this. I built. You built nothing. I cut her off, my voice hard. You inherited a successful company and drove it into the ground. The only thing you ever built was lies. The chairman cleared his throat, his tone formal. Miss Victoria Chen, the board is requesting your immediate resignation. Security will escort you to clear out your office. As Victoria was led away, mascara streaking down her cheeks, I felt no joy. This wasn't about revenge. It was about preserving our father's legacy. Dean, the chairman said, his voice formal, we'd like to discuss your return to Chin Innovations as CEO. I shook my head, a soft smile tugging at my lips. Thank you, but no, I've built something of my own at Chin Digital Solutions. I won't abandon that. Then perhaps we should discuss a merger, he suggested, voice smooth as he leaned in. Both companies would benefit, and it would honor your father's original vision. That night, as I sat in my office, reviewing merger proposals, I found an old photograph buried in a drawer. It showed Victoria and me as children, perched on our father's lap while he worked. We were both smiling, before ambition and jealousy tore us apart. My phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. I'm sorry for everything, can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to leave her to deal with the mess she'd created. But another part, one buried deep, one I hadn't let show in years, remembered that little girl in the photo. Tomorrow, I replied. Bring coffee. The next morning, Victoria arrived early, 2 cups of coffee in hand, not from some expensive cafe, but from the small diner we used to go to with Dad. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. I brought your favorite, she said softly, placing the cup on my desk. Triple shot vanilla latte, extra hot. I gestured to the chair across from me. You remembered. I remember a lot of things, she replied quietly. Like how Dad used to let you play with his computer while I was at dance practice. How excited you'd get when you solved a coding problem. The familiar, rich aroma of coffee filled the room, and suddenly I was 10 again, sitting at that old kitchen table with Dad, both of us discussing the future, back before everything went wrong. Why did you do it, Victoria? I asked, my voice unsteady for a moment. Not just the will, everything, the accusations, the arrest. She stared into her cup, her hands wrapped tightly around it. I was scared, she said, her voice low, terrified. Actually, everyone expected me to be this brilliant successor to Dad's legacy, but I didn't understand half of what the company did. You were the one who got the technical side. You understood everything. You could have asked for help. And admit I wasn't good enough? She laughed, bitter and dry. Do you know what it's like being the eldest? Always having to be perfect? When Dad started mentoring you more, teaching you things he never bothered to teach me, I felt replaced. The rivalry between us had been years in the making, both of us trapped in a cycle of competition, never allowing room for anything else. So you tried to force him to choose you. The affair, it was real, she said quietly. I found out by accident, but using it against him? That was the worst thing I've ever done. He died thinking I was a monster. Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister, not my rival. He loved you, Victoria, I said softly, despite everything. Did he? She wiped her eyes, her voice cracking. The last thing he said to me was that he was disappointed. Not angry, just disappointed. That was worse. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out the USB drive that had caused her undoing. Want to know something? I said, holding it up. There's no security footage on this. It's empty. I just needed you to think I had proof. Victoria stared at me, her face registering shock before she suddenly laughed through her tears. You played me. The quiet little sister outmaneuvered me completely. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. I learned from the best. She wiped her eyes. But there was a new understanding between us now. What happens now? With the companies? The merger is happening, I said, taking a deep breath. Chen Innovations and Chen Digital Solutions will become Chen Technologies. But I'm not running it alone. She frowned. What do you mean? The board suggested a co-CEO structure. You'll handle the business strategy and client relations, the things you're great at. I'll handle the technical side and operations. You trust me? After everything? I took a slow sip of my coffee, thinking carefully. Trust is something that needs to be earned. But family? That's different. Dad built this company believing in the power of family. Maybe it's time we honored that. I don't deserve a second chance, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Probably not, I agreed, but you're getting one anyway. Don't waste it. The next few months were difficult. Merging two companies was complicated enough without adding the weight of family dynamics. But slowly, we found our rhythm. Victoria's skill in networking and client relationships complemented my expertise in the technical side. Together, we were stronger than we ever had been apart. 1 year after the merger, we stood side by side at the grand opening of our new headquarters. The lobby featured a wall of photos chronicling the company's history. In the center was a picture of our father, flanked by childhood photos of Victoria and me. He'd be proud, Victoria said, studying the display, not just of the company, but of us, for finally figuring it out. I squeezed her hand. Better late than never. That evening, we had dinner at the old diner, sitting in the same booth where we used to eat with Dad. Victoria slid an envelope across the table. What's this? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Open it. Inside was a legal document. She'd officially changed her shares in the company to joint ownership between us, equal partners, just as Dad had always intended. Victoria, I whispered, stunned. It's time, she said simply. No more games, no more power plays, just sisters, building something together. As we left the diner, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for so long. The arrest, the safe, the inheritance dispute, they all seemed distant now, a cautionary tale we'd finally learned from. Just as we stepped outside, my phone buzzed again, a message from Alex. Emergency at the office, server crash. Victoria peeked over my shoulder and grinned. Race you there. Loser buys coffee tomorrow. I smiled, remembering the countless childhood races home from school. You're on, I replied. But I warn you, I've been practicing. As we rushed to our cars, laughing like kids again, I realized something important. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about winning. It's about stopping the scorekeeping altogether.